overview of leaf springs from a Morris Minor. So this is a 5-leaf rear spring from our 1961 Morris Saloon, which I took off about 18 months, 2 years ago, because although it looks bowed here, it was quite flat under load. This is the front, and this is the rear of the spring. And as you can see in the front here, these are the original bushes, and they're rubber, and actually they're not in too bad nick. So there are the rubber bushes, and you can also get, here I've made one earlier, poly bushes. And these are polyurethane bushes, which are good replacements for the old rubber ones, and these don't wear. But looking at the old rubber, you can see they were slotted straight in with some white lithium grease. Obviously I haven't got any white lithium grease on me. They would have popped in there, and then you would have put this pin in through that side in the car, and that pin would have come with a plate. When I find the plate, I have the plate here earlier. This is the pin that I took out of the car, and it's still on the old structural plate because it's actually rusted or painted in. Couldn't get it out, so it would have fitted in here through the front spring hanger bracket into the poly bushes. 2 small bolts there, and then a big bolt on that side, and that's how that fitted into the bracket. Now, when I take these off, I don't tend to bother to try separate the pin from these brackets. I leave the pin in the bracket, spray them liberally with WD over a few days, and then when I come to remove this pin, I take the bolt off this side or cut it off, and then put a lever in this side and start to lever and tap at the same time. And I found that very successful, and I've done a few leaf springs now, and this removes the whole lot. So when I buy a leaf spring replacement kit, I tend to go for replacing all the components, so I can just cut everything off if they're rusted solid. So let's go to the middle of the spring hanger, which is here where this nub is. And when you're redoing the spring, this is a rubber pad that goes on first. And then what I haven't got is a locating metal plate, which goes on next. And then the bump stop sits on top of the metal plate, which I haven't got because it's on the car. And then the U-bolts go through over the bump stop, through the locating plate, right down. And then you get another rubber pad like this, then another locating plate, and then the shoe, which holds on the rear suspension damper, which is this unit here. And the rear suspension damper sits on the side of the leaf spring there on its bracket, and then up onto the car body like this. And the job of this is to slow the bounce down and to smooth the ride out when going over bumps. So that's what the rear suspension damper does. So we go to the rear of the spring. It's very similar to the front, except for the pins are slightly different. They look like this. And these are called shackle pins. And there's 2 shackle pins, one that fits through this spring here, like that. If I had lithium grease, it would go through, but I haven't, so it's not going to. And then there should be the shackle plate, which I had earlier. Where's he gone? What have I done with the shackle plate? So eventually we found the plate. This is an old one, but it'll do for what I'm trying to show you. So the shackle pin goes on, plate goes on there. Then you get the bolt, goes on that. Just take that one off there for a minute. That goes on there. Eventually. And that goes on that pin there, and that goes through the body in the car. And then obviously you have your poly bushes then, which fit into the body of the car on the shackle pins like that. And the whole car rests on these 2 pins here, 2 U-bolts there, this front pin here, and then it bolts to the rear axle through the U-bolts right there. And all the load of the car goes on this section. And there are different sizes of leaf spring. So on a saloon there's 5. On the earlier saloons there were 7, but they were thinner gauge metal, and then they reverted to using 5. It's probably cheaper. And then on the Traveller, the pickup, and the van, due to load bearing, they go to 7 leaves of this gauge, which is thick enough to take load. So that is an overview of the leaf springs, and then in the next video I'll show you the leaf springs on a car, where you can see all the components and where they're positioned and how they work. And there we go.